in Lagos, highest in Nigeria's history. Now, that the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has made the highest cocaine seizure in Nigeria's history on Monday, where the Anti-Narcotics Agency announced the burst of a major warehouse in an estate in the Korodu area of Lagos. Kelechukwu, I want to believe you've seen this story, and what's your reaction to it? What are your thoughts? Share some with us.
Yes, so they ought to be commended. I mean, it's not every time that we have something nice to say about the Nigerian government. So when they get it right, we need to commend them. This seizure occurred, intelligence gathering for this seizure started in 2018, and they did it in collaboration with the America's Drug Intelligence Agency, America's DEA. So it shows that Nigerian security agencies or outfits can be effective when they have the right motivation. Since Buba Marwa came into office in January 2021, they've been very active with reporting seizures and all of that. And between January 2021 and October 2021, they made over 8,000 arrests. And they said in the last 20 months, so from January 2021 to August 2022, they have freezed 600 accounts and over 286 assets. My concern now would be, how are these assets disposed of? And if Nigeria is able to pull off this type of intelligence gathering, can they extend it to the police, to the military, to how they deal with terrorism issues? And I mean, can we just at least see some database, not just press releases from its media aid, Femi Babafemi, or press releases are good, but we want to see data on how they disburse the loots, that the proceeds from drug crime that they get. We've had similar issues with the EFCC over asset recovery and how they are disbursed, and I mean that is still causing ripples. We are still not clear on that. The AGF Malami fought with Magu over that, and so yeah, so it's nice that they made they busted this ring, and we want to see them show us how they deal with the loot that they recover from it. I just want to add one more thing though. The fact that drug trafficking is thriving in Nigeria, it means that that's one other avenue for youths who are not in school right now and who can't get jobs to go into, despite the risks. So we need to look at those underlying factors as well.
I mean, $278 million worth of, cocaine seized here in Lagos. This is the one that we know about. How about some other drug gangs that the NDLEA is yet to bust? How can we, synergize properly to totally overhaul perhaps the system of getting this illicit drug into Nigeria?
That's not going to happen in me and youth's lifetime.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it's possible to totally overhaul the system. I do not think, I mean, the US has not totally overhauled their own system. For example, in Mexico, you see drug cartels like Sinaloa and Betos using US military issued weapons to carry out acts of terror in their own country. Same thing in Honduras and all of that. In Afghanistan, you probably know or have heard that the CIA probably gives some form of support network to opium trade through what they call the Golden Triangle. So, I mean, drug business is big business. So you cannot remove it completely. You just have to keep fighting it the best way you can as a country.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
All right, our next story comes in from the Punch newspaper, and Uade, I'll come to you for this. Now, the headline reads, students target Apapa ports after airport road blockade. This is under the aegis of the National Association of Nigerian Students. And on Monday, they made good on their promise and grounded activities at the Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos when they defied the rain and all other things. And, actually blocked the access roads to the international and domestic terminals of the airport. And they also gave us a promise, saying that today, Tuesday, Apapa Port is next.
They're going to Apapa Port. First of all, let me commend both the students and the security operatives that protest
Descend into
escalate.
violence.
Yeah, and not descend to violence. When you read the story, you would get a clearer picture of the fact that it was not just the police, but also the military presence was available, and there was good dialogue between both sides. The one thing the spokesman for the police that was in charge of it said was that they had some form of agreement, meaning that both parties had sat down and agreed on a time frame, which I think was supposed to be about 6 hours, but I think it extended a bit more. But we saw what it cost along the Ikeja axis. I don't know what the federal government is still doing, but like we also know they've taken us to court. If you go down further in the story, and
A judgment is expected tomorrow.
Expected tomorrow. The judge in charge of the case had heard both sides yesterday and would pronounce his judgment on Tuesday. But for me, I think the students are beginning to wake up. That's one. Secondly, that they have gone about their protest in a peaceful manner, despite the fact they've blocked economic activities around the airport. But the loss to Nigeria is what the federal government should be counting, because it delayed people from going about their regular businesses for at least 6 to 8 hours.
The airlines had to reschedule their flights.
And a number of things. I'm sure some of the international flights too might have been affected because of the delays and shifting in schedules. And that would, I'm sure very soon you would hear what the economic impact was for that 6 to 8 hours of protest in Nigeria, in a country that we're continually seeing the economy not moving in the right direction. Do we have to go through this every time? Do we have to continue to lose money because the federal government or the government or the governance and the governance system really does not ensure that things that are meant to be done are being done correctly? But like we said, let's wait for what the judgment comes out tomorrow. If the judge would tell us to please go back to the classrooms. But the one thing you can be rest assured is, if that happens, ASU will file an appeal, and that in my legal luminaries should, will be in a better position to give, a clearer picture of where that could go.
Uade, one question I'd like to ask you, considering the what we've seen in the history of the federal government's attitude towards dialogue and strikes as well, and who is deemed worthy of change and action after whatever strike they've pulled, do you think that what the students have done now and the actions that the Association of Students took yesterday and have promised to take today will make a change or will make a difference?
Well, I'm not sure it will make a difference, but it will create a huge economic impact on the economy. Because for me, when you've seen this administration, it claims that it continues to dialogue, but each time you have a dialogue, when consensus are reached, you don't seem to want to implement them, and this has been the trademark. However, this is not new in Nigeria when students protest over different things to improve governance. It's been going on for years, for as long as I can remember. It's taken a long time for the students to actually mobilize and do this, maybe because they've been out of school. Usually some of the things are when students are in school. But the loss to the economy for me, it's huge. If they go to the Apapa port, now that to a large extent the gridlock in Apapa has been cleared and traffic is much better, it means that those working in Apapa today would, and we know how much could be lost in terms of business. Like I said, I'm sure in the next couple of weeks you hear economists telling you how much was lost just by people not being able to get to their places of business, airlines, having to reschedule flights and so on. So yesterday, I'm sure where you have had airlines do 3-4 flights between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., they probably just did one, and that is huge economic loss to the economy.
All right, let's take it over to Daily Trust, where federal government considers pay rise for workers over inflation. In fact, the Honorable Minister for Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, is saying the federal government is planning to increase the minimum wage of workers from the current 30,000 naira. He stated this in Abuja on Monday while addressing members of the Nigeria Labour Congress at a public presentation of a publication titled Contemporary History of Working Class Struggles. But I want to take our minds back, Kelechukwu. On the 18th of April in 2019, the president approved the new minimum wage. In fact, some 2 years after, there were states that struggled to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage.
Some 3 years after, states are still struggling.
Okay, in fact, let's come to you for this. Go ahead, talk to us.
I just wanted to let you know that it's not like some 2 years after, like the states are still struggling because the economic levers for them to be able to make that increase does not exist. I mean, they are not solvent enough to pay anybody, maybe except themselves from fact earnings and stuff. So yeah, it sounds like good news. It should be good news. That is why port owners and port workers and rail workers in the UK are striking, because they want more money. They want more salary to cope with inflation. And Labour has not gone on strike, and the Nigerian government has said, yes, we are going to make this improvements. It sounds like the Nigerian government are being proactive. But where are they going to get the money from? That's my own question. NNPC has not remitted anything into the FAC for 7 months, or probably even more than 7 months, but let's just say 7 months for the point of what I'm sure of. When you put more money into the system, you are going to definitely increase inflation. Inflation rate in Nigeria for August was 20.52%. Year to date, it's about 17.56%. And it's been rising since January. We know why. I mean, some of the factors causing it is not our fault. But when you add increased salary to that, you are going to definitely increase the inflationary pressures. And you already have a budget deficit. You are already planning a budget deficit of 12.43 trillion for next year. I'd like to ask Ngige if this increase in salary was factored into the medium-term expenditure framework that was submitted to the National Assembly, or if it's just an afterthought. So that's another thing that we need to get clear, because more salaries means more loans, because we know that Nigeria borrows money to pay salaries. So, yeah.
Now, is he playing to the gallery?
Sorry, Kelechukwu. I do think this is something just to calm the airwaves.
Since he was speaking to NLC.
Yeah, and since he was speaking to the Nigerian Labour Congress, even the federal government truly has barely been able to pay the 30,000 because we've continually borrowed to fund recurrent expenditure. Almost 70% of our earnings of our borrowings go into repayment of loans in terms of the interest and recurrent expenditure. And when you think about that, you just need to, first and foremost, like I said, calm the atmosphere so that Labour doesn't go out and say, oh, inflation is killing us and we need more money. The states have been struggling and they will continue to struggle. When you think about it, in a further story, you hear that internally generated revenues within the state grew by about 31% between 2019 and 2015. And the effects of COVID across the world and the general inflation levels across the world, even in the UK, is getting as high as 20%. In America, you can see them rates are continually rising. So when you think about that, it's not just a Nigerian problem; it's a world phenomenon, and also because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. So we see this, but how do you fund it? And like Kelechukwu said, is it in the medium-term framework that has been approved, shown to the world, and we're doing a budget deficit of almost 12 trillion, of which over 50% of it is going into fuel subsidy. So really, I think it's just something for the government to calm the
Yeah, it's true. Fuel subsidy this year. They plan to spend 6 trillion on fuel subsidy next year. So they should be figuring out how they will increase it.
All right, let's take it over to your messages on WhatsApp.
We'll start off with D from Alausa, who says that in response to Kelechukwu, says that your analyst said the U.S. supports drug trade through a certain opium triangle, and he goes on to say that he thinks that might be a conspiracy theory. Moving on,
Well, good question. Do we have to go through this economic blockade all the time just because the federal government is proving to be stubborn and don't want to pay attentive ears to the plight and demands of students? Asu Dako from Adesonia sent that across.
This message in from Yinka Bolu, who says, protest is everyone's right, no doubt. But if I choose not to protest with you, do you have to force me? Because that's infringement. Blocking access to roads and all of that is completely unacceptable. Take the protest to Asu Rock and you have our blessings. If Asu had taught them the financial impact of the loss of productive man hours in operations research, I'm sure they would have had a rethink about yesterday. Isn't that the whole point, Yinka? They haven't been able to because they've been on strike. He goes on to say, and if ASU feels not well treated by the government, please leave the jobs. Why protest in Lagos when LASU, a state university, is not on strike? The federal government wants to send 6 trillion naira on, wants to spend 6 trillion naira on subsidy. Can they end subsidy and push the money to ASU? I'm trying to figure out what side of this debate you're on. It's interesting.
Well, Soji sends a message from Olodi Apapa, says increasing the minimum wage looks like a good thing at face value, but the real problem is the depreciating value of the naira. If we start fixing the economy, the naira will gain more value and the 30,000 minimum wage will be able to do more than it is doing now.
All right, Ladele Johnson says, it still baffles me that we, the citizens, keep doing ourselves more harm. So what use is blocking the road to the airports? That doesn't actually affect the people. Why not go to the folks that caused this strike? We, the citizens, need to learn to stop channeling our energy and anger at the wrong people. Like I said last week, you see these lecturers, we need to actually question their motives.
And B from Lekki says, the biggest news today is the drug bust. Well done to the NDLEA. Some have said they deserve national honors, and I agree. That's how you encourage exemplary behavior. God bless Nigeria.
All right, Annie Dimapuza from Surulere says, ranching is the only panacea to solving the farmers and herders clashes, which affects foodstuff production and prices. It will also dissuade kidnappers residing in the forest pretending to be herders. Oh, so many messages, but also we have more stories.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll bring more stories to you. Jesus Christ, I forgot.
People have just been going on. You didn't take break.
I forgot.
The stories are sweeting.
I forgot.
You're on YouTube.
Are you on YouTube?
Of course we're on YouTube.
We can banter when we're on YouTube, but that's not the we won't know. Let the people be listening to our banter.
You're welcome.
Which one is next? State police.
I'm trying to help you. I don't remember. I should tell you. All right, and here we are on the other side of Freshly Pressed, coming in with more from the Nation newspaper. No going back on call for state police, say Southern governors. The governors' forum reaffirmation came days after their northern colleagues and counterparts and monarchs made this call. So they lauded the resolution of the 19 Northern States Governors Forum and the Northern Traditional Rulers Council that called for the immediate, and I quote, immediate establishment of state police in order to address the frankly worsening security situation in the country.
Fine.
Everybody seems to want state police.
Finally, I think all the 36 states are finally agreeing on the fact that you need the state police, and which is good for me. So many things can come out of it. Better security architecture within the states, working with the federal government. The huge challenge will be, how do you make the amendment in the constitution? So if the governors need to push, then they will have to also get their state assemblies to push in this direction. And
I mean, we've already seen Ekiti State Assembly doing so.
Yeah, so aside from the constitutional amendment, there would also be state laws that would guide how the police will work based on the amendments in the constitution and how the federal system will work with the state system, which is a very critical part of the security network and the security architecture that should be put in place. But this is good news for, I think, the southern state governors, because they've been beckoning for this for a long while, and their northern counterparts are, I guess everybody has faced the reality. But the question now is, can it be done before the end of this administration? I don't think so. From next week, it's going to be more about the political campaigns and what the various parties have to offer. And I think this will be a huge part of the system, of a huge part of the topic to be campaigned on, state police across the nation. So this is it's a welcome development, since 36 states are now saying, let's go ahead.
All right, well, leave it to the business of lawmaking and governance to take a break. Let's
All
move
right.
on.
Uade will still stick with you for this one. Just a few thoughts. Daily Post subsidy. Cameroon stopped importing PMS, depends on smuggled products from Nigeria, NNPC Limited. Now the NNPC has said that some West African and Central African countries have stopped importing petroleum products and depend solely on smuggled products from Nigeria. Umar Ajia, the Chief Financial Officer of NNPC Limited, revealed these on Monday while speaking before an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives investigating fuel subsidy. Now, the CFO said most countries surrounding Nigeria now fully depend on the subsidy from Nigeria to sustain. And this is not the first time we're getting this report. I recall that in November 2021 or 2020, El Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State, had said the same thing, where he blamed, the Nigerian government for not acting appropriately. And he said Cameroon had stopped importing PMS and they were depending on smuggled products from Nigeria. I see that Kelechi is back with us. So maybe Kelechi would attempt this. I mean, if El Rufai had talked about this some 2 years ago or last year, is it now that the NNPCs are aware of the fact that Cameroon is taking, our products from Nigeria and making use of it over there? In fact, they've shut their refineries and they depend on our subsidized products here. Kelechi, are you with us? All right, Uade, go ahead.
So this has been ongoing. The Controller General of Customs, I think it was last week or so, said the estimations of 98 million liters of petrol being consumed on a daily basis in Nigeria was where did it come from? And when you look at the statistics and the numbers, it's been ongoing. Smuggling is rampant because at the end of the day, the cost of fuel in Nigeria does not meet the benefits of and if you read through the story, if you had 5 million naira, you would go past the border, meaning that a number of accomplices could be part of this system, and the system is very, very profitable, and that's why people are doing it. So at the end of the day, we're subsidizing inefficiencies, which is what I see, and that goes to show why we're looking at spending half of our budget deficit in subsidies in 2023. This has to stop. Subsidy has to go. It should go like yesterday, if not like 10 years ago. And we need to create the enabling environment for when it goes and how we can be transparent in putting this the gains of removing subsidy into the system. And when people continue to say, oh, the Dangote refinery will reduce the cost of petrol, I read on I can't remember, I think it was the Business Times not too long ago, it would still come to a price of between 300 and 400 naira per liter. That's the reality of the world market today, And if we don't bite that bullet as quickly as possible, this will continue to happen. We will pay for the inefficiencies through subsidies. People are still making more money than expected, because not only are you smuggling and selling, and you are also, making gains from subsidy. So subsidy should go clearly.
All right, then let's take a look at more messages. We'll get this one in from Babafemi Onogweson, who says, up on YouTube, how do you pull off that magnitude, referring to our very first story, how do you pull off that magnitude of a drug bust without firing a shot? Something doesn't quite add up about this news. I may be wrong, but I'm just thinking out loud.
You watch a lot of movies.
Henry from Lagos Island says, your analysts are spot on. Increasing salaries is not the way to go for now. The federal government should first review the salaries of top-level legislative and executive members. They are overly paid, and it makes these positions too attractive.
All right, let's see this one in from PJ, who says, while I support what the students did, we need to evolve new protest strategies that hurt those hurting. Such as identifying the houses and businesses causing us pain and occupying them.
All right, let's see if we can just quickly get to you, Uade, for this story. I'll read out the headline from the Vanguard. Kanu's health worsening in DSS detention. This according to the lead counsel on his case. Go ahead with this.
So quickly and briefly, I do think, based on what he says, they're not letting him see his doctors, they're not letting him take his medication, even the least medication for his pains. I think the DSS should ensure this is done. Let him see his doctors. If they need additional medical care, let him get it. Because the worst thing that could happen and could trigger a number of so many things is he dies in custody of the DSS, which for me would be a complete mess. So let him have access to medical care. If he needs the proper checkups, let them. If they have to, if he has to get in a specialist to come and tell them what they need to do, then let that be done. And that for me will be that. You don't, because of the fact that he's in custody, deny him of his human rights of having medical attention at any point in time, if that's based on the allegations from his lead counsel.
That's about it for today. Thank you so much, Uade Ahimie, for bringing detailed analysis to us. We must also thank Kelechukwu Ogu, who joined us virtually today, and he did good with the analysis. We look forward to more conversations with Kelechukwu. Let's keep the conversation going on Twitter at Smooth91FM and Uade_Ahimie.
Uade Ahimie _.
Thank you very much. And